Yesterday was the day after Her Majesty the Queen died. And it was a very sad day because we'd had the evening and the night to think about the loss of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And for many people, I imagine, and obviously not all, but for many people, she was their queen, the ruler of their country, or my country, and was an important figurehead. Whether one actually knew her, I was very lucky to have shaken her hand, albeit very briefly in the most ridiculous of circumstances, as it turns out. But it was a wonderful experience. But most people haven't or didn't meet her, but would have had the Queen as part of their life. I was told the figure yesterday that Julia told me this actually. She'd heard it somewhere. And it sounds right. I don't know how true it is, but something like 93% of the 6 billion people in the world have only ever known the Queen as the Queen of England. That 7% would have been older to have known the King before that. And so yesterday being the day after the very sad news, I was quite surprised when I went into town and found the shops, particularly the chain stores, but even the independents, very few had anything to say or reflect in their shop windows. I thought that very strange. I went into Morrison's, and I'm deliberately naming this supermarket. For those overseas, Morrison's is one of the big chain of supermarkets that we have. Morrison's is close to my house, so it's one that I go into frequently because not so much that I support them, it's just the convenience of there being so close as opposed to other supermarkets that I have nearby, some which are walking distance, and others which would mean getting into the car, or in my case, the van. And it's so close, Morrison's, that it is just round the corner and over the wall sort of thing. Anyway, I went into Morrison's yesterday at about 5:30, so quite towards the end of the day. And I was surprised, I suppose, in the foyer, as you go through the sliding doors, there was a small table with a white tablecloth on it, a bunch of pretty nondescript flowers, and in front of that, a square black-framed message saying that Morrison's give their condolences to Majesty, the family and all of that the Queen had died. And I can't remember exactly what the wording is, but some sort of mealy-mouthed load of old tosh that people often say in these situations. I mean, appropriate words. But that was it. And I thought, I'm sorry, and people were just walking past this as if it was nothing, because it was. It was just very trifling. And I looked at this and I thought, wait a minute, you're marking the passing of our Queen, who had been in the job for 70 years, but with a tablecloth, some trifling flowers, and a little frame with a few words on it, and that's it. And I just felt incensed. So I marched up and asked to see the manager. And the woman happened to be, she says, well, I am the manager. And I said, your table there with the flowers, I said, your mark of respect to the passing of our Queen, our great Queen. I said, it's a bit pathetic, isn't it? I said, the least you could have done is put her photograph on. The image of the Queen is on so many things, our banknotes, on our postage stamps, on the post boxes. Well, not the image of the Queen, but her crest. It's on so much. It's part of our life. But we are very moved by the image of the Queen. The image of the Queen should have been there as a mark of respect, I felt, rather than just some flowers and a notice. I mean, to be honest with you, it was one up from these planning permission notices that you see stapled to telegraph poles or bus stops, when in the street there's going to be a little bit of a change to the structure of the road, or somebody wants to sort of change the licensing hours on a pub, and usually on some sort of post or something there's just this little a laminated note that's just stapled on there. It was little more than that, really. And I said, I think you should have a picture of the Queen. Wouldn't take much. You could print that off on a computer upstairs, and you've got frames that you sell. You could have done it in an instant. She said, this is what we were told to do from the head office. And I thought to myself, head office has told you how this individual store, albeit part of a chain, is going to celebrate or commiserate, rather, the passing of our Queen at this one-off situation. That these people in the shop, or the customers, or anybody else, this shop is in our town. These are our people coming in. We come in day in, day out. And so you're just going to let head office come up with a simple, pretty boring directive to say, oh yeah, just some flowers and a tablecloth and print these words out. That's the corporate message. That's the message that we're going to do. That right, done that. Right, now let's have a look at our sales figures. As if it was just, a local dignitary who'd passed, or somebody had collapsed in the shop and died, unfortunately. It was like, sorry about that. We had a bit of trouble yesterday when someone was knifed in the store, and this was the Queen. And I was just absolutely gobsmacked at the lack of respect and the lack of the ability for the individual store to mark the passing of the Queen in an individual way and not have to wait and be guided or to be instructed by head office. I just thought, I don't know. Now, you may think I'm overreacting, and you may think that I'm being absolutely sensationalizing something that, is the fact that they marked it at all is quite sufficient. You may think that was enough. But it was the culmination of walking around the town and seeing about 3, possibly 4 shops who had done something in their window. The least was a photograph of the Queen. I think the fabric shop had lovely fabrics and put some black fabric round the handles of the door to signify the death of Her Majesty, which again was, respectful, I think. Most people hadn't. And I was, to be honest, I was quite disgusted, really. And I made a bit of a video about it, which will come out later in the week. But that's neither here or there. Then in the evening, at 6 o'clock, I watched the King's speech. Her Majesty, the Queen, had died, and the powers had gone to her eldest son, Charles, who is now our King, King Charles III. And I listened with interest to what he had to say, and I have to say I thought he did it remarkably well, and it was better than I thought it was going to be, and he answered so many of the questions I think that a lot of people were wondering what would happen. It was a brilliantly crafted speech, I thought, and he delivered it with sincerity and passion, and we move on. We're in the days of mourning, of course, and that's right and proper. And then we will move on. And I'm not sure when we get the coronation. I think it'll probably be next year, will it? And all of that. And then we will see all, the various changes in our public way, in our individual lives, such as the stamps and money and all of that. But as we go into this new era, I started to think to myself, this is a strange time. This is a strange time. The king, who resides over everything, is not. He's not the prime minister. He's not a president. He is the head of state. The prime minister has to go to him and have a weekly meeting on a Wednesday, I think it is, in which to report on his parliament, the state of the nation and what's going on. And also the prime minister seeks advice from the king now, and previously would have been the Queen's long reign of experience of dealing with all sorts of nations and things. And that's, that is how things go. But I was thinking, this era that we're in now, we're in a very sorrowful place, it seems to me. In fact, I had to make some notes, which I've just written down here. For at present, I think we've lost and changed so much in the last, well, particularly I think in the last 80 years, and more so in more recent years. And I don't put this down by the way, just in case you think I'm putting this down as a result of, or at the saying it was any fault of Her Majesty the Queen. I'm not. I don't think that at all. I think that she's had to preside over this and seen it herself. But it seems to me that this era that we're in, and we've lost law and order. The police seem to be not interested in solving crimes anymore and catching burglaries and all of that. They seem to have changed their profession, which is a bit worrying. We've got rid of all our manufacturing. We can no longer, it seems, to produce any energy ourselves, so that we're at the behest of other countries. We've not really taken on board the education of our children terribly well. We've lost the respect for our elders and our traditions and our customs when it comes to that. We don't really seem to want to care for those of us who are ill. Look at the way the national health is at the moment, and people in care homes and people with disabilities. We've destroyed the countryside, the wildlife, the insects, things that matter. We've engaged on this uglification of England, or Great Britain, I should say, with the buildings that we put, the architecture that we put up, the building of new homes on farmland, which all look pretty much the same, uninspiring, and more like some prison camp or concentration camp rather than new dwellings for people to live in. We've lost the integrity of Parliament. Just look at the last lot, with the lies and the parties and the lack of care for everybody. We seem to, in this country, have lost the general state of our health, eating completely the wrong foods, following weird guidelines and not caring for ourselves, so that there's so many people who are overweight, for example. We've become immensely polarized, so that if somebody doesn't have the same opinion as you, they're an idiot. That people will argue. People cannot listen to the other side of a debate without getting extremely cross or name-calling. We're meek. And it seems now as a nation we're just unable to think for ourselves, looking to the parliaments or the government, our elders, or our elites rather, to tell us what to do. We can't seem to think for ourselves. We've given everything to corporations, the ability to manufacture food and feed us, to provide us with light and electricity. Everything to these large corporations who are making all the money, getting rid of all the small businesses and the little shops with these huge chain stores that decimate the look of towns and villages. We've opened the borders to all and sundry, changing the overall makeup of our nation. We've lost the belief in ourselves and all the good things that we've ever done in this world, in our history. And it seems to me that we've also given over. We're now prone to the great lies of doom that we're being told. These, catastrophic things, and the only way to deal with it is if we follow this guidance, and we're all meekly following it. This is the new era that we're in, it seems to me. And I'm usually an optimistic, positive sort of person. You may not think that from just listening to all I've just said. And I hope that we can rectify this. I hope that in the new era that we can look at ourselves and go, blimey, this has been a bit much, hasn't it? We've almost wrecked the joint. Let's not wreck it. Let's get law and order back. Let's have the energy produced back so that we're independent again and self-sufficient. Let's educate our children in a better way. Let's look after our elders and make sure people who are ill are able to get better health conditions. Let's not destroy the countryside. Let's bring wildlife and the bees and the insects back to everything. Let's have Parliament and members of Parliament becoming more accountable and have their integrity returned. Let's get our health of the nation back in. Let's eat the right things. Let's not just let ourselves go. Let's have a bit of dignity in us. Let's try not to be too polarized. Let's think for ourselves and not let everybody else browbeat us into something. Let's have more independent shops and support small businesses instead of giving everything over to the very large corporations. Let's protect our borders so that the people who live in this country are proud of this country and can all get on with one another, speak the shared language and share traditions and customs, and not have to have arguments and knife crimes in our major cities. Let's believe in this country again, and let's not open our ears to these great lies of doom. That's what I hope for in this new era. You may disagree, and I would be interested in your thoughts on that. And of course, these are just my opinions. You may have different opinions, and I'd be interested to read them. Let's now go and have a look at what we've been saying into the last missive, I suppose, the last chinwag, and all your comments. Well, not all of them, but some of them. So let's start here with, now I can't pronounce your name, I'm sorry about that, but it looks like Zanabek or something. And he says, there is information online for the protocols, re the Queen's passing. Disappointed you didn't research this before your blog. Well, you may well be disappointed, and that's up to you. Be as much disappointed as you like. I can't control your disappointment. You might be disappointed that I'm wearing glasses or that I'm bald. What a ridiculous! It's always ridiculous when people say, "Oh, I'm disappointed." Well, be disappointed. The fact that there's information online is great. You could have sent a link so that we can actually see it. Just saying it online. Do you know how many websites there are online? There's quite a lot. So you won't have to wade through that. It's ridiculous. Glorious Dag says, I was a child when King George died. I remember we had to be quiet and the curtains were all drawn. For the coronation, we were given an orange. How things have changed. Look at that. I mean, there you go. We had to be quiet and the curtains were drawn. How many people have drawn their curtains? Digger the Dump says, I hear your sadness, Richie, the nation's granny. Louise Lage, who has since emailed me because she thought I was, my response to her in the previous one was, I think I misunderstood because I'm reading these on the fly. So I may have misunderstood when she was talking about YouTube not being a terribly good forum in the comments for debate on subjects. And I totally agree. It's not. People are responding to a video, but it's not really a great place to have that because it's it's just not the ideal. Anyway, she says, so I emailed back and I said, look, if you felt I had a go at you personally, it's because I misunderstood. So I think we're back on the same page. She says, I think we are all a bit bewildered as to what comes next now the Queen is gone. So you're not alone. Lovely story about you meeting Her Majesty. The world will not be the same without her. Totally agree with that. We all need to be kinder to one another. And that is also very true. We do. Sisyphus, I think that's how you pronounce it. It says, my heartfelt condolences go out to all the citizens of her realm. Being from the US, it is hard to explain what the Queen meant to me. Right, yes, I can understand that. She was a great lady of integrity and she will be greatly missed in the whole free world. Thank you very much for sharing. Thank you very much for that. I can understand, and people in different countries, of course, will have always known the Queen, and your relationship with that is going to be, very different with everybody. I imagine that the English people will have a different relationship to anybody overseas, but then there will be people in the Commonwealth countries that will feel in different. Everybody's going to be feeling very differently, I imagine. Flappy Goose says, if this was the Elizabethan age, are we now in the Charlian age? I suppose we may well be. He then goes on to say, Charles is all signed up to the WEF, whatever that is. So this change of monarchy will bring no good change. Scary times. I'm not quite sure what WEF stands for. And so sometimes it's always, is it the World is it the World Economic Federation? It could be. I'm punting on that, but it's always good to have the full name if you're writing in that, because not everybody knows what the anachronism is, and me particularly, because I'm a bit thick really, and I'm the first one to confess that. And I don't really know what the World Economic Federation or Forum or whatever it is really stands for. To be honest with you, couldn't really care. Tony Bones says, many thanks for the update, fella. And indeed, many things will have to change now. Passports, the police badging, in addition to what you mentioned. Yes, that's right. So my passport actually has expired some time ago. It was an EU passport. So I'm going to be waiting for... I have no huge rush to leave the country because I love the country very much. But if I do need to get a passport, I should just wait for one with King Charles on it and his crest, etc. Emily Lemieux, if that's how you pronounce your name, and I apologise again. I said this before, but I'm not very good on names. I'll just leave it at that. Says yes, a guidebook on what would do in the protocol, and as somebody else just suggested, it's probably online somewhere. It would be good if people told us where that was, not that particular individual, but perhaps the various national broadcasters to say, look, this is where to go. I mean, it would be good if the BBC, for example, or the Times were to put these things up and go, this is not something that we normally live through. And so if you want to know what is recommended and what is the respectful thing to do, here is a guide for you to get through it. I think that would be helpful, because I think people are a little bit, well, what do you do? Are we supposed to dress in black? Are we supposed to put armbands on? Are we supposed to put pictures of the Queen? I think people have lost the ability to think for themselves, as I said before. And so that's why people don't really know what to do, because we don't have, the collective customs and traditions that we once had, that ability to think for ourselves and go, oh yeah, this is what you do in a time of crisis. This is what you do. We've lost that ability, it seems to me. Well, we don't know what to do because normally we're told by the government. A guide would be good, but not a directive. By the way, she says something about me looking okay, and then she says, I don't know what... yes, I know men don't wear outfits. I'm not quite sure what you're going on about there. Sorry about that, Emily. She says, I'm in the USA, very upset. Charles the Dud will rule. Even his father knew that Charles. Anyway, so not very polite about our king, actually. And he was the Prince Of Wales, who was vocal in his opinions. He had the ability to do that, but now he's the king. And he's the monarch. And the head of state. It's a very different situation. So I think, for those of you who've already judged him, I think you can't judge him as the king and how he will reign, is what I would say, until you've actually witnessed it and seen him. We may have an idea of what goes on. Some of his ideas and things, I think, are a bit barking, in my opinion. However, I'm suspending that judgment now because he is the king, and I'm prepared to give him. He hasn't got long. He's only got 20 to 30 years to reign, and I'm prepared to give him, as I think everybody should, the chance. Everybody should have the chance to prove themselves in such a role. Steam Searcher says, we have a flag somewhere, probably take us 10 days to find it. Okay, he said, we'll be singing the new national anthem during the next Bald Explorer walk. Not quite sure what you mean by that. The Great Reset says, Sonera's ash tree will commence on steroids now. There's obviously a lot of doom and gloom here. And Michael White says, I'm afraid Charles III is on board with the WEF. Again, is that the World Economic Forum? We are going to miss the Queen. Well, we're definitely going to miss the Queen. That is for sure. So let us see. Finally, vintage news. He said, I dressed in black today, as we should until the funeral. I don't think anyone else is bothering. Long live the King. And I think that is the message that people need to think about. The respect for somebody who gave her life for service in this country, which is something that very few people live to 96 and are still working and doing their duty the day before they die. Very few people have given their whole life to the service of the country. Very few people. You could probably count them on one or two fingers. And I think that deserves respect. Whether you like the Queen, dislike the Queen. And I think if you don't, then, like so many people who don't seem to like Great Britain or England, then go. Don't be in this nation. Go somewhere else. This nation has been established for long enough. And if you don't like it and you hate it, as so many people a number of people seem to do, then why don't you go? We don't need to change this wonderful country and our traditions and customs just so that a small minority can be happy. So anyway, be interested in your comments. Thank you very much. A little bit emotional today, but we'll see what happens.